According to a federal appeals court on Tuesday, family members have a constitutional right to keep a loved one's autopsy photos private and can sue law enforcement officers who release those pictures. My guest is retired Superior Court Judge from Santa Clara, California, the Honorable Eugene M. Hyman. Judge Hyman, let's talk about this particular case. It involves the death of a child some years back and autopsy photos that were released.
Yes, and it's very interesting that in terms of the result and in terms of the thought process. Now, the other thing that's going to be interesting in terms of how far this case is taken by lawyers. For example, this is kind of an emotional hot button. That is, when we're talking about autopsy photos and we're talking about a child. Now, I predict that autopsy photos, whether it's a child or an adult, there isn't going to be a distinction made. But what will be interesting is in terms of confessions in certain types of cases, or locally in San Francisco, Sheriff Marcarini is going before the Ethics Commission on charges that he acted unprofessionally as a sheriff because he assaulted his wife, and he pled guilty to a domestic violence-related offense of false imprisonment. And the big issue there was whether or not the videotape that was made of her when she's explaining to her neighbor about her injuries, whether or not that should be disclosed to the public and to the Ethics Commission. And the ruling of the Ethics Commission, and I don't know if her attorney has brought an appeal or not, was to release it, and that it had compelling value, and that he pled guilty to the crime, and therefore there was no privacy issue. So I think that there's a very important distinction that could be made between a video of a victim who's talking about something very intimate, that is being abused by her partner, in this case her husband, versus an autopsy photo. And I think that there is a distinction worth discussing, that the autopsy photo, in terms of releasing that, really doesn't benefit any kind of independent inquiry. If the issue was whether or not the person had been murdered or something like that, or if there was an issue in terms of causation, and then if this particular picture photo to be released would help explain to the public and give an increase in terms of confidence, in terms of a proper outcome, then I think maybe the court might have ruled differently in terms of privacy, because there'd be a compelling overriding interest, and I think that's what it takes, is a compelling overriding interest on something that is so sensitive. Yeah. So I could see situations where, although this particular court ruled this way, in the right situation, even something as compelling as an autopsy photo of a child might be ordered released in another kind of case where there was a compelling public interest to having confidence, let's say, in a verdict or action taken by the police or something like that.
Yeah, and this whole case is interesting, tragic yet interesting in a lot of ways. This was these photos were disclosed to law enforcement by someone who wrote a letter supporting the conviction of the man who was convicted of second-degree murder in this. And because of this issue here, I think technology later on discovered that it was quite probably an accident, and so
right.
They were looking at perhaps, exonerating this person. Now, these photos were given to law enforcement. Law enforcement released them to the media, but the media didn't even publish them. And even in this particular case, there's liability for law enforcement, right?
Correct, under a privacy concern. But I think that there was compelling. I think the lesson here is that, as you just described, there was a compelling public need, and I think the court did a weighing in terms of that and decided, and maybe because it was a child, I don't know, they didn't specifically state that in this particular case that it was inappropriate. But I think in another case they might rule that it would be appropriate.
All right, Judge Hyman, thank you.
Thank you.